Was the metaverse just a pipe dream? In this short midweek episode of For Immediate Release, we'll explore whether we're experiencing the metaverse winter. Another fine podcast from the FIR Podcast Network.
This is For Immediate Release, the podcast for communicators.
Hi everyone and welcome to For Immediate Release. This is episode 326. I'm Neville Hobson.
And I'm Shel Holtz. And AI is everywhere. Everybody's developing new tools, and the media can't get enough of it. In fact, the AI conversation has grown so loud you can no longer hear anything about the metaverse, which was all anyone was talking about before OpenAI released ChatGPT last November. And if you do read anything about the metaverse, it's that it's dead. Is it? Is it really? There are, to be sure, some troubling signs for the metaverse. A number of the big players have either scaled back or dropped their plans. Disney laid off all 50 people, shut down the division that was developing its metaverse strategies. I don't know, Neville, if you saw all the posts on LinkedIn from members of that team who were posting about the fact that they'd been laid off. It was sad. Meta, the company that changed its name to shine a light on its metaverse ambitions, they had an earnings call in March, and all Mark Zuckerberg talked about was AI. Microsoft has shut down its AltSpace VR unit. They say they're still committed to the metaverse. Walmart shut down its Universe of Play on the Roblox platform. And, you know, one of the reasons I think the press is convinced that the metaverse is going nowhere is that Zuck has created this perception that the metaverse requires a VR headset. And there are problems with that. I mean, first, their own virtual world, Meta Worlds, which requires a VR headset, is a ghost town that nobody has anything good to say about. And second, sales of VR headsets aren't exactly burning up the world. Sony reported that they're selling fewer PlayStation VR 2 headsets than they expected to. And then there is AI. The obsession with AI is creating a problem for the metaverse. As Tim Bajarin put it in a Forbes piece, the shift in investment to AI is going to set back the most significant innovation and advancements in the metaverse for the foreseeable future. And over on Politico, Derek Robertson is calling it Metaverse Winter. How's that for ominous? But I don't think that spells the end of the metaverse. Writing for VentureBeat, Doug Griffin refers to Amara's law, which states that tech innovation can be overhyped in the short run but underestimated in the long run. There are still projections being released with expectations like 25% of us will be studying, shopping, and socializing in a shared virtual environment by 2026, which is not all that far away. There's a metaverse expert, I guess, if you can have metaverse experts at this point, named Louis Rosenberg, who argues that the public is still confused about what the metaverse is and how it will benefit society. And he puts the blame for that squarely on the shoulders of Web3 influencers because they describe the metaverse in terms of blockchains, cryptocurrencies, and NFTs. What he says the metaverse is all about transforming how we humans experience the digital world. It's the transition of the digital world from flat web pages, which is what we've been looking at since the web was new, to immersive experiences. And trust me, he says, it's not dead. If anything, it's inevitable. He also says we won't be spending our lives in cartoonish virtual worlds using creepy avatars to chat with people. These virtual spaces will get more natural and realistic and will be targeting short duration activities, and it will be rooted in augmented reality, letting us experience the real world embellished with immersive virtual content that appears seamlessly all around us. Now, there are still technical challenges to overcome to realize, I think, the ultimate vision of the metaverse. These include interoperability, that is the ability for virtual worlds that make up the metaverse to freely exchange data. Then there's the ability for an indefinite number of people to be in the same space at the same time, regardless of what kind of bandwidth they have or how they're connecting. And whatever they do, everybody else is able to see the impact of that instantly. These are technologies that basically don't even exist yet. They will emerge incrementally over the next several years based on work being done like people like, Epic Games. They just showcased a bunch of features and tools and tech that connect to its vision of the metaverse. They're behind Fortnite, which, like Roblox and Minecraft, are the platforms from which this future metaverse we all envision are going to arise. And it is more or less the metaverse of today. And there are millions of people who are in these virtual worlds every day, spending money and engaging with each other and having experiences. In fact, a Wired piece suggests that the metaverse still has time to avoid the mistakes that plague the internet, like people harassing one another and distributing misinformation, because it's far enough off that those safeguards and guardrails can be built into it. And there are, by the way, hundreds of examples of companies using metaverse technologies right now, from building digital twins to VR-based new hire orientations. And there is a new virtual world. I found this one interesting, Neville. They held a test gathering that had 7,200 people in it for 90 minutes, and it worked flawlessly. That was the second trial run of what's called the Other Side virtual world. They're planning on launching later this year. So I wouldn't count out the metaverse, no matter what you're reading about a metaverse winter.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, definitely. I'm actually thinking more about the conversation you and I had July of last year when we reviewed Matthew Ball's book called, coincidentally, The Metaverse.
Great title. Very descriptive.
To the point and very accurate. I thought we also talked about Richard Kerris, an executive at NVIDIA, who's at the forefront of their activities surrounding the graphics tech required for enjoyable experiences, if you like, in the metaverse, which is still, you noted this, not clearly defined in a universal way. I did like his description of it, which was, to quote him, people are misinterpreting metaverse as a destination, a virtual world, this or that. The metaverse is not a place. It's the network for the next version of the web. That was a good starting point. And Matthew Ball came up with something a little, maybe more to the more kind of precise, certainly quite relevant. Here's his definition. And this is the author of the book I mentioned. The metaverse is a persistent and interconnected network of 3D virtual worlds that will eventually serve as the gateway to most online experiences and also underpin much of the physical world. And that's the bit I don't see people mentioning at all. I think he's absolutely right. This is a connection, a combination of the two. So think of Ready Player One. I often have metaphorical views on that with the virtual, the computer-generated world, let's say, for the movie, combined with the real world of almost like a favela in this city in which it's taking place in 2045. But there's a connection of the two. And I'm also thinking, listening to what you were saying, some of these folks you mentioned who are quite happily defining what it is when it's actually you can't define it yet. And it reminds me, okay, this is, of course, August last year, so it's 8-9 months ago. But Gartner's hype cycle, which tends to be quite widely quoted, it's pretty accurate. They said in their hype cycle for emerging tech in 2022, which was published in August of last year, that the metaverse is more than 10 years out until it reaches this plateau of productivity. And if you know about the Gartner hype cycles, you know what that means. This is mainstream adoption. And it's important to point that out because all the stuff you've mentioned that's going on now, yeah, that'll continue. And you'll have, by way of differentiating it, little metaverses here and there. They're doing great stuff, but it's not mainstream. So the Roblox and the Fortnites, that's not mainstream. That's a sizable chunk of people, mind you. There's also, I was reading just the other day, an MIT report on the industrial metaverse that's aimed at, or not aimed at, relevant, let's say, to literally industrial manufacturing companies, big scale, global enterprises, these kind of big companies this is a version for them. That makes a lot of sense to me. So that's part of, I suppose, trying to define what it is. And in a sense, you could say, for you, Mr. Industrial Manufacturer, the metaverse is this. And that might work for a lot of people. But it's more than 10 years out. You mentioned digital twins in reference a minute earlier. And Gartner says that's 5 to 10 years out before that's in the mainstream. But people are experimenting. So I think it's wrong to say it's dead and over as I guess the central thrust of this conversation, when it's patently not. But I don't agree at all that it's, look at the evidence, the metaverse is all happening. Well, elements of this journey are taking place. They're not connected. And that's a bit like, in a sense, the internet, with the capital I, as Dan York would pointedly remind us, the network of networks. And of course, it is exactly that. Is that what the metaverse is? Well, according to those definitions I mentioned from Richard Kerris and Matthew Ball, it's not a place. It's the network for the next version of the web. Both of them don't disagree with that, even though they're describing it slightly differently. So I think we got plenty of room for seeing who's doing what and how is it evolving, how is it improving. You will continue to have voices such as all the ones you've mentioned. I've got another one to mention too. It's sort of peripheral, but it's actually not. It's quite to the point. A report in The Block, an online journal, reporting about the Metaverse Fashion Week that took place in Decentraland a few days back. Attendance plummeted 76% compared to last year amid a worrisome trading volume. So attendance dropped from 26,000 from 108,000 last year. Barely more than 1,000 people were online simultaneously during the 4-day event. And the reporter said it was like a ghost town everywhere. The number of active buyers and sellers, this has plummeted. Concluding point, the metaverse platform's days could be numbered. And that gets repeated everywhere. So add that to the mix about it's all dead and over. I think this suggests perhaps that the hype is collapsing, maybe. Maybe people are wising up to the fact that this is not this kind of utopia of milk and honey or wine or whatever it might be that appeals to everyone. It's got a way to go yet. People are still trying to figure it out. So I just pay attention to the experiments I hear about that people are doing in various areas, and I try hard to ignore all the rubbish hype that's being talked about.
Yeah, and I read a report that Decentraland is not making as much money on land sales as they were before. The value of the land has declined, but all of the land they have
it's definitely going down the toilet. Then, Shel, is that not true?
No, but all of the land they've put up for sale has sold this year, so that suggests something. I don't know what to say about Fashion Week. I don't know how well promoted it was. I don't know how successful it was for the people who engaged last year. Maybe that's not the type of thing you do there right now.
Quite good from some of the reports that you see. Yeah. So they're all pointing to the fact it's now collapsed. So.
Right. But digital twins, I pay a lot of attention to digital twins since I work in the construction space, where this is a highly relevant technology. And, not a week goes by that I don't see somebody getting $10, $20, $30 million in venture capital to start a digital twin company, that there are digital twins for this airport and this massive construction project or building. They're making the use case for it that you can try things out on the twin before you implement it in the real building to make sure that it works the way you want it to. These are all The network of networks is a great way to look at it, and I don't think that's inconsistent with that definition of how we experience the digital world, right? Because you're going to have the stuff that you need the VR headset for. You're going to have the Robloxes and Fortnites of the world. You're going to have the industrial metaverse. They're all separate, but they'll all be somewhat connected the way all of the stuff that's on the internet, disparate, different things are connected now.
Yeah.
And
the point, by the way, I mentioned about, I just want to say that the point you mentioned about digital twins is precisely the point where what you just said the work some companies are doing, some people are doing to move this forward. Well, that's exactly how you get to the state Gartner's predicting 5 to 10 years.
Exactly.
Because there's work going on now. Where it gets, it kind of destroys the arguments when you realize that some of these sensationalist predictions are all about is suddenly we're not seeing anything happening. It's all gone now. Not true. These little things are happening on way. That's how you get to the state where it suddenly becomes mainstream, right?
Sure. And you look at the industrial metaverse, as mentioned in this MIT report, and that's what's going to bring a lot of people into a more public metaverse environment. Those virtual worlds are going to get accustomed to it at work and say, wow, this is so much better than being on a flat one-dimensional web page. Why can't I do my banking this way? Why can't I do my Amazon shopping this way? So when it becomes available, they're going to jump on it because they've gotten accustomed to it at work.
Be patient. It's on the way.
It's coming. And before we go on another topic, I just want to let everyone know that, Neville, you and I recorded an interview earlier this week with Aaron Quitkin, who is the founder and CEO of PR Profit, an AI tool that's for public relations practitioners. It basically will help you write your pitch and identify the reporters out there who would be interested in it. And it was a really good interview, and you won't find it on the FIR feed. That's on the FIR interview feed. So if you would like to hear it, you need to go give that a listen. But it was a good interview.
Yeah, it was. And the first one we've done in a long time. In fact, I think the last one we did was a couple of years ago, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, I've done one or two on my own, but
but we used to do
few and far between as well.
I'm looking at the webpage now. 2021, you did the last one you did on your own. I mean, this is some years ago. We used to do a lot of them, but they're good. It's about 30 minutes. This particular one with Aaron. It was an interesting conversation with what he's doing with an AI-driven pitching system. Is one way of putting it. But it's exactly the kind of thing an artificial intelligence or a generative AI tool is kind of ideal for, right? So I could see.
And interestingly, he was working on this before ChatGPT was released to the public in November 2022.
And that was his kind of magic moment when that came out and was available. Yeah, so worth a listen. He was a great conversationalist. So definitely, if you have a moment, go and listen to that one.
It's on the FIR Podcast Network. It's FIR Interviews. And that'll be a 30 for this episode of For Immediate Release.